Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. We're going to do another page in our watercolor journals. I am going to be using my Bao Hung sketchbook, my core watercolor paints, QOR by Golden. Check out the description for links to supplies and materials. They are all there, everything I use kind of on a regular basis. And also, I am using Princeton Velvet Touch brushes today, round brushes. I have a size 6, a size 4, and a size 10. And I am going to be painting a folk art inspired painting where we make something fun and whimsical. And yeah, that's what we're going to do today. Okay, so I am going to be doing just a nice little landscape with a big sun or moon. Usually my suns or moons are like white or yellow, kind of more realistic to a sun or a moon, but today we're going to go a little fancy. I think we're going to make one in a different color. So I am going to first put in that sun or moon, and then I'm going to build some hills and landscapes around it. So let me just grab a pencil. Usually I have one a little more readily available, but I put everything in my box. Here, I'll just grab a mechanical pencil. All right. Oh, I grabbed a mechanical pencil with nothing in it. All right. Just grab this number 2, not very sharp pencil, but we really don't need it for that much. All right, I'm going to put this sun or moon kind of off to the side here, like that. And then I am going to put in a series of low hills, like this. And I'm going to build some fences on these hills, but then I'm also going to put these other really kind of funky, big, exaggerated, almost like gumdrop shaped hills in the background. And I think I might do one right over the sun / moon. All right, so we'll erase that line in there. Fun. So let's draw a path on one of these. So skinny, and then gets really wide towards the front. And then we can also put a fence. So a fence would go kind of along the shape of the hill and would also be wider at when it's closer to us and get narrower until it almost disappears into the background. And then we'll put in our fence posts, which will be taller and get progressively shorter, just like the disappearing fence. There we go. So we have a fence post, we have a path, we have some fun hill elements. Maybe we'll add in some trees later, but for right now, this is good. Okay. Very important part of this, the kneaded eraser to lighten up a bunch of these lines. So one, definitely the line inside our hill because this is going behind it. And then I'm actually going to lighten up the edges of my sun moon quite a bit because it will still be a lighter color and I don't want to be able to see the edges of that. The other hills and things should be okay. I'll paint them dark enough. All right, so let's get in our sky and I'm going to start there. So what color are we going to do? So I think I'm going to try to keep this a somewhat desaturated color palette where we're not using the brightest tones of our colors, but we're mixing them with maybe some complementary colors to get a more earth tone version of it. So I think our moon, sun, whatever it is, we're going to call it a moon, okay? So like a fantastical moon on some other planet is going to be blue. But I'm going to paint it like I do, like when it's a yellow sun and it's bright in the middle. So I am going to paint the edges darker. And this one's a little more challenging because I do have this hill I decided to draw in front of it. So I'm making sure this is nice and wet as I go around. I'm going to rinse off my brush. I'm going to add water here. Boo, boo, boo. And blend this out. And I'm going to make the edges even a little darker. But first I want to get it all kind of wet and blended. So you can see here I have that harsh line, but that's okay. We're going to add more. And the hard part is we have to like remember that the darkest, if you're trying to paint a round object, that you can't always paint around this with that darker color either. It's just going to look like an outline versus the actual shape being darker around the edges and glowing towards the middle, because this is part of the middle. So you have to actually outline it with a lighter version of the color. All right, let's pull out a little bit of color here. And then I'm also going to push in a little more color. So this is Payne's Gray and Phthalo Blue. So let's add, and normally this is a color I would use for the sky around a glowing moon, but we're going to change it up and make this the moon color. All right, and now my brush is clean and there's really no water on it. It's damp, it's got a little dampness to it, and I'm just going to use it to move around what's already on the page. And then rinse it off again. There we go. Okay, I'm going to let that dry and see how it looks. And then we're going to start to look at some of our other areas. So if I have a blue moon, normally I do like a dark blue sky with a light yellowish color moon. So what are we going to do for the sky? Maybe we'll just reverse it and I'll do something that's kind of a yellowish color. I am going to add a little bit more. I know. Said I wasn't going to play with it. It was just starting to get a little bit of a harsh line for me, and I don't think it was going to dry very evenly. Okay, let's let that dry and we'll come back and pick some other colors. All right, we're back. So I think I've decided that we are going to do like a tan yellow up in the sky, and I'm going to do a muted kind of olivey green, sappy olivey green. So I'm going to use sap green, a little bit of magenta, very, very little bit, to make a nice olivey green. And I think that's going to be a nice calming color palette. So also I'm going to use that tan color in the walkway here. So let's just start. I'm going to start over here with this sap green slash magenta color. So this it's a little bit more muted, a little bronzier. And I'm going to do a bit of a gradient wash, so darker at the top, a little bit lighter at the bottom. There we go. And over here, so I have raw sienna. You could add, I'm going to add a little bit of magenta. There we go. But raw sienna, I'm going to fill in this pathway. Darker towards the back. I'm still using a size 10 brush. You could definitely go smaller right now. A little darker towards the back. Let that dry. All right, as this is drying, let's put in another. So I have these hills here, but I also have, I'm going to paint right over the fence. I also have these other big hills in the background. I don't know if I want them also to be this green. I think they have to be a different color. Otherwise it's going to be too much green. So let's get these painted in and then think about that. Being very careful because I know this is still a little damp here. All right, let that dry, and then I got to do this one over here. Again, I got to be careful with my little, you could definitely let it dry, or I should have taken a heat tool to it. But that would be silly, being patient and waiting. And you can already see I have a spot bleeding into my pathway back here because I wasn't patient. So do as I say, not as I do, as my mother often said to me. And I will come back in and touch up my little pathway a little later on. We'll make sure to get all the way to the edges here. I think I will add a tree or something maybe later on. All right, so we have our moon and we have our hills. So let's let those dry and we'll come back and work on our sky. And then these other hills in here, our fence, add some more details to our pathway and then see where we are. All right, we're back and it's actually a day later and everything is dry. You don't have to wait a full day. I just had a few other things to take care of. So we are going to jump back into this piece where we need to now put in our hills and our sky, and then also work on some of the details on these hills down here, the fence and I think darkening up this path a little bit or creating some shadow on it. So let's do the hills. Now for the hills, I'm actually going to use an indigo. Indigo I don't, which is very close to this, but this has a little more phthalo in it. So this will be a little bit darker, more grayish color. Actually, they're very close. Maybe I will, but I still like it for the color palette. Let me see. I'm going to add some Payne's Gray to my indigo. We're going to gray this up a little bit more, I think. We're going to see how that looks. And I'm pulling a little bit of color out. There we go. All right, so let's do that one. We're gonna do this one. And normally I actually would do the sky first for these, because the sky is a lighter color. But I jumped right into these hills. I was excited to get this color down. So I think you'll see the difference when we put these two next to each other. They looked very similar, but they are quite a bit different. This one is much more of a gray blue, and this one has a lot more blue in it. Go, and one more. And these darker colors, they always look so dramatic when you put them on, but as they dry, they definitely lighten up quite a bit. So keep that in mind. You can always add more layers to them if you want them to be darker, more saturated in color. All right, so while those dry, I'm gonna go back to my little path here. And I'm actually gonna add some burnt sienna to my raw sienna, just to darken up the back part of it a little bit. And then I cleaned off my brush, and it's a little darker towards the back. Actually, let's darken that up even a little more. Okay, we're gonna let that dry, and then we also have to do, we'll do this fence while we wait for the rest of these to dry a little bit more before we put in the sky, which is gonna be like a raw sienna sky, so like a yellowish color. Okay, let's pull out some Payne's Gray, I think. For this fence, I put it right on top of my blue. It'll be a bluish gray, which will be fine for this little fence. So I switched to my size 4 Princeton brush. Everything is bigger as it's closer, and it gets thinner and smaller as it gets further away. I'm going to give it a second line. There we go. All right, so these seem pretty dry, so let's give our raw sienna a try. I'm going to switch back to my larger brush because this is a pretty large area, and we're going to keep this pretty subtle. Let me clean out one of these palettes. Clean out the orange. and pull out some raw sienna. So I'm going to start with a darker color at the top. I'm going to have to move that clip. And then I'm going to rinse off my brush and add water. And then as I get further down and further down, it's going to get lighter and lighter towards the horizon line. Go a little darker at the top, wet on wet. Let's move this. And I don't have any tape on this. We're just going right to the edge of this journal page. I'm actually going to throw just this scrap piece of paper underneath so I'm not getting paint on the page below it. There we go. And I am definitely going to add a little bit more towards the top. I really like these colors together, actually. They're very subtle, a little muted, but this blue, these blues and this raw sienna, which has very orange undertones, have a great complementary color like combo going on. Oh, I've reactivated a little bit of paint there. There we go, and it has like a nice little horizon glow going on that I like. Trying not to reactivate the paint in the blue moon. So I'm not sure how I feel about this blue and blue. I think I like it, but maybe I could have chosen a different color. Or maybe I can go even darker with this. Let's see. Because these are dry now, so maybe if I go darker, I will feel better. Whoops. The edges of this are not dry, so I'm going to have to take care of that for sure. That feels a little better. If I go darker and let it like fade out towards the bottom, it kind of plays into this glowing kind of ethereal effect that we're getting. But I should have let the background dry because I'm getting a little bit of bleeding on the edges here. I was just so excited to see what would happen. So putting on that first base layer, that was important. I think I would have still had to do that and have to do a couple layers to get the intensity. But I do prefer this darker version with a bit of a gradient to it. Go. And then while I finish this up, I'm just thinking about what other little details I can put in here to really make this piece sing. And again, getting really carried away with these edges that are going to bleed. So make sure your background is dry. All right, I'm going to dry everything and then come back and add some details down front. All right, we're back and everything is pretty dry. So I'm just going to take this dark blue. This is going to be like our anchor color. And I'm going to add some details right in front to just give this some grounding foundation. So just some leaves and grasses. And they're going to look almost black, but as they dry, lighten up a little bit. So just taking that indigo, and I feel like this really does kind of give the piece another dimension of texture, kind of brings it together. I don't think I'm going to go across the whole bottom. I'm going to go the two sides. And I'm just doing some funky little grasses here. And then if you wanted to add anything like, I don't know, shrubbery or foliage on the hills, you could. It's going to have to be a darker color than what's already there. But let's see. You know what I might do, even though it's on the yellow, I might take a lighter version. Let's see how we feel about this. A faded version of this blue and put some rolling hills in the background between these hills. So they're further back. Yeah, I think that creates some nice depth. There we go. All right, what do we think of this piece? This is a fun little whimsical landscape with some funky little hills and grasses and colors. Thank you so much for joining me once again. What other details would you add if you were doing this piece? I'm Sienna Cerulean. Don't forget to check out the description to this video for links to supplies and materials that I use regularly. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Leave a comment and follow me on Instagram if you'd like to see me over there. All right, y'all, take care. Happy painting, and I'll see you for our next watercolor journal page soon.